Hey, my name is Tim, and in this video, I want to show you the amazing capability of a tool I use every single day when I make videos for my channel, Cleanshot 10. Now, this is a screen recording and screen capture tool. Most people just use it for taking screenshots on a Mac, but I actually use it for screen recording, and I'm actually using it right now. Let's hop out of the full screen overlay and I'll hop into the recording mode I use all the time for making video tutorials. I'm actually here on the Cleanshot 10 page. Now, it's really important to understand that this tool has so many capabilities in one application. It lets you take screenshots. It lets you do screen recording with overlays, as you've just seen. It also lets you do scrolling captures that lets you basically take a screenshot of a long page whilst scrolling the page. It's just an amazing tool. And then on top of that, it's got some great UX and user interface elements like the overlay and a full set of features and settings that you can customize to suit your own specific workflow. This is what I love about the tool, and in this video I want to walk you through some of these features and how you can use it alongside the way I use it in my workflow. As ever, let's get stuck in. Okay, so to show you how Cleanshot 10 works, I'm going to have to stop using the recording and switch over to my other camera, which I'm going to use over here. As soon as I stop recording the video, you'll see I actually get an editing tool that allows me to very quickly trim the video that I've just recorded and even customize the export and the audio capabilities. It essentially allows you to do some very quick edits and get the video pretty much good to go right from the interface. It's a very, very nice feature set. You're not going to be doing video editing here. You're just going to be getting the export done correctly. It also has the ability to capture text from this recording as well, using the macOS Ventura capabilities in the most recent version of macOS. But I'm going to go ahead and close this and actually show you how to customize all of these controls. Now, when I have Cleanshot 10 on any given page here, you'll see this sort of interface. And what I'll do is I'll close everything down so you get a completely vanilla setup. When I go ahead and click on this top option here, you'll see that I actually get a drop down of all the capabilities that Cleanshot 10 can actually do. At the top, you've got an all-in-one mode, which basically just presents everything you could possibly want in one interface. It's kind of really handy, but I don't tend to use it a lot because I often know what I'm trying to do right out of the gate. For that, I have the ability to capture the screen. Now, I tend to use the native macOS shortcuts to do this, and I've essentially set up Cleanshot 10 to override those controls. So when I go back onto the canvas and I hit my shortcut for screenshots, you can see I get this little plus icon. And if I select a window and just hit spacebar, you can see that it highlights the window. And if I hit spacebar again, it goes back to the plus and minus icon. I can then go ahead and take a screenshot of the entire page. I can just draw a box around the section I want. And when I'm done, it has a preview on the bottom right. Now, this preview is pretty handy because it has three capabilities I want to highlight. The first one is when I hover over it, it gives me the quick settings I need, whether I want to delete or copy this. When you copy the image, it copies it to your paste bin. So essentially, you're able to go ahead and paste it in a Word document, paste it in the browser. The macOS operating system captures the image that's been taken. The other thing you can do is you can actually go in and use the annotation tools. And the annotation tools are super powerful. I'll come back to them in a second. I'll just go ahead and hit done, and you'll see that the overlay still remains. The last thing I can do with any screenshot is I can go ahead and pin it. And this is handy when you're trying to take a screenshot of something and then you want to be able to reference it. Let me show you how that works. Let's say I want this web page up constantly on my screen whilst I reference it to do something else. I can go ahead and change the size of it, put it on the top right hand side. I can even close this overlay down, and now that will stay there on top of everything else. It's a super handy feature. I use it all the time just for taking notes, or when I'm working with data, I'll take a screenshot of something very quickly, check it, and then I'll use that as a way of checking information without necessarily having to have the overlay open. I'll go ahead and close the overlay so you can see that working. That is how this works. It's just so good, and I love this tool for that reason. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to show you the annotation tools, because these are, honestly, they're next level. I'd honestly say most other tools don't have annotation capabilities as good as this, and those tools are annotation tools. One of the things I use a lot is a tool called Presentify. I wish it had annotation capabilities like Cleanshot 10, but that's a video for another day. Here we are in Cleanshot 10. I've just taken a screenshot. To keep this simple, I'm going to close everything down so you can see everything how it should normally work without any distractions. Along the top, you can see I have my annotation tools. It's a fully set up set of features. On the left, you have the ability to edit the image, crop it, and even provide a background. I'll come to that later. And then you've got things like arrows, boxes, lines, text, backgrounds, and a bunch of other things. Let me show you a few of my favorites. These are all pretty straightforward. They work exactly to explain, but let me show you a few of my favorites. The most recent addition allows you to do something I've always wanted to do that is such a pain. When you click on it, it essentially allows you to take the screenshot you've set up and give it a background. In this case, I'll give it a blue background to match the sort of colors of my channel. I'll go ahead down here to the bottom. I'll reduce the rounded corners. You can see the rounded corners get a little bit smaller. I can even add the shadow to make that sort of shadow of dropping it on this background a little bit better. And then if I want to put this in a specific ratio document, I can go ahead and choose that. So if you're working on socials or maybe a PowerPoint slide, let's go ahead and do that. Let's choose 16:9 for a standard PowerPoint slide or even a full screen image. This is what you're going to need. And then the final thing is it lets you add a controllable amount of padding to the image. So it's just making the image smaller and adding more padding so that it continues to fill the proportion that you set up, and everything is going to be absolutely golden. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger so we can continue to edit this nicely. Now that's done, I can go back to my annotation tools and carry on annotating as I wanted to. I'll go here, change the color to red. I'll highlight this in a circle, and you can see it's super thick. If I want to change that, I just select it, go back here, and I have a whole selection of different widths and depths. I can choose whatever I want. The one feature I absolutely love is the customizable arrows. I can choose different types of arrows. I can choose a curved arrow, which essentially works exactly as you'd expect. You draw a straight line and then you curve it after the fact. And you can go ahead and again and change things how they work. So it's just such a good feature. The final thing is text. If I actually go ahead here and just type some text, you can see that as I start to type, it gives it not only the text color that I want, but it actually puts it on a white background because it's really aware of the contrast capabilities of the font and the color that you've chosen, and it automatically chooses that. Let's say I was to go ahead and pick white. It actually changes that to black, as you can see, because obviously white text on a white background wouldn't work. You don't have to worry about that. It's all taken care of for you. And I actually like the limitation here. You can see it's not got a wild range of fonts because it's actually forcing you to be a little bit more controlled. So if you want some customizations, you can of course take the standard image, go and do it somewhere else for whatever stylistic reasons. But I really just like the limited choice that you get here. I'd love to be able to add my own presets to that so I could have my own style in that list, but force me to choose a preset and then that's the style that gets used all the time. But nonetheless, you can see it's a pretty good feature. Now, one of the other things you can do with this, and I actually use this a lot for documentation when I'm talking about data sources and other bits of work, is you can actually add contextual directions to a screenshot. Let's go ahead and show you how that works. The first one is this number label. I can go ahead and say, this is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3. Now I've gone ahead and chosen the worst colors. So let's go ahead and change these to red so they're really obvious. And you notice I only changed one of them and all of them changed because of course they all need to be using the same color. It's just a smart little finesse that I just love that is built into this tool. Then once you've done that, you're probably wondering, well, it's still not clear what steps I need to take. So another annotation tool here is the highlight tool. Here, I can just go ahead, draw a box around the specific thing that I want to call out. And I tend to do this and put the little pin on the top left-hand side so it's super obvious what the highlight is referring to. And if anything is not sort of perfectly placed, you can just click on it, go ahead, space it again, and then boom, we're done. And now you've just gone and annotated an image in a really, really clear way. So I absolutely love the way this works. It's just so smart, and I think it's extremely well thought through and built software. Okay, the last thing is obviously saving this. There's a bunch of ways to save this. The most obvious one is it automatically saves it to a location that you preset when you set up the software. The other thing you can do is save it to the cloud. I'll be upfront, I don't use Cleanshot X cloud. I use my general saved folder, which is actually in Dropbox, and I just prefer that. I like to be able to control my assets. The other reason I don't use Cleanshot Cloud much is because I actually record a ton of videos. I can sometimes do recordings that come up at about 10 gigabytes when I'm recording at 4K 60 frames per second on my 4K monitor here. So it can actually build up pretty large files. So I actually have a local setup that manages all of that using Hazel to move files around between folders, but also it just makes a lot more sense to not be using up that bandwidth for videos that I might never actually use. So I like to manage that myself, but I highly encourage you to head on to the Cleanshot 10 website and check out their cloud offering. It's especially great for teams. Now, the other thing you can do, once you've saved everything, you've customized everything, you can obviously go and crop things. You can pretty much customize this to your heart content. everything you do in the interface works exactly as you'd expect. So when I'm done here, you can see that this overlay stays here on the bottom left. And if I go to another screen, it actually follows you to that screen. And if I come back, it comes back as you've just seen. The other thing I can do is I can actually drag this asset and just drop it on the desktop. And in this case, the desktop is actually on my other screen, so you can't see it, but it's actually saved that image to the desktop. And now I can just interact with that image as normal. When I double click and open it, I can bring it back on screen and there's my saved image. It's a really, really nice feature set, and I just love the level of control and finesse that you've got. Now, how do you control all of these things? Well, Cleanshot 10 has a pretty robust settings and controls menu. So if I go over here to the very left-hand side, you can see it's got a ton of settings and controls. The general tab is pretty straightforward. I have this set up to start at login. I have different controls for screenshot versus recording. I also have it set to my Dropbox folder, as I highlighted earlier, which is why I don't use the cloud offering as much. The other cool thing is wallpapers. Now, have you ever had a messy desktop? Let's say you have something on your desktop and you just have a mess. In fact, let me create a mess on my desktop right now so you can see this in action. Let's go ahead to my displays. I'll actually set this to be my main display. So let's set up this main display and let's hope everything in the recording is still running. I'm looking over at my monitor, my external monitor, to make sure it works. You've even seen my notes for this recording of talking points. Now you can see I have a messy desktop. You can see the saved screenshot I have from before. Now, if I minimize this, you can see, okay, great. I need to go ahead and take a screenshot. So let's go ahead, open up a window. There we go. We have something set up. And with this setting, if I go to my settings, I can actually tell Cleanshot 10 to hide things on my desktop while I'm taking a screenshot. So I don't actually have to have a tidy desktop to take a screenshot. To do that, you've got a couple of options. Number one, you can say here, you can choose a desktop wallpaper, which will be set if you hide icons or take a screenshot or record video. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. We're going to go ahead and do 4. And can you see the desktop icons disappeared? I haven't taken my screenshot yet. Let me finish taking my screenshot. I'll include everything on the desktop. And when I'm done, it pops back. So now when I open up the annotation tool, there was nothing on my desktop. So smart. It just briefly hides everything and you're done. It's just such a well thought through feature. I love it. I love it so much. If I go back to settings, you can see you have full control about how that works, whether you want it with a wallpaper, when you take a picture of a window, again, to show you that, let's just go ahead and try that. So when I do this, you can see that actually it took a picture of just the window without any sort of context whatsoever. And if I go ahead and close that and go back to the settings and choose to keep the background in there, then you'll see that it actually does keep the background. Let's this time take a picture of the settings here. We can go in, open that, and you can see it's kept a bit of the background there. But when you keep the background, this setting I showed you earlier doesn't work so well because it kind of has to keep the background on the new background you've added, and it gets a little bit sort of confusing. If you add a wallpaper, then it also has this sort of weird like inception effect. So I tend to not have this transparent option set up with this new capability that they've recently added. Let's go back to the settings and have a look around more of this. You've got shortcuts, you've got other specific ways of using this. The shortcuts I think are fundamental if you're using this. The only two I need are for screen capture and screen recording. And the final thing I'll talk about is here's the recording settings. Now the recording settings are pretty straightforward. If I go back to general, you get a nice list of options that you can set up. The video settings I think are really, really good here. The S-tier tool for screen recording when you're making tutorials is actually a tool called ScreenFlow. That's what pretty much all the tutorial platforms use, whether it's Thinkific, LinkedIn Learning, everyone pretty much tends to recommend ScreenFlow. And the main reason is it's got a lot more control about small things that are important for recording screen recordings. But Cleanshot 10 actually comes pretty strong with a bunch of basic things that you can get right out of the gate. First one is being able to choose the maximum resolution of a recording. You can also change this after the fact. I'll show you that soon. You can choose the frames per second. In some cases, you might want a really high frame rate. Let's say you're recording a very quick moving elements on a screen. Maybe you work in animation or graphic design. You want to go for 4K 60 frames per second if things are changing very quickly on the screen. But if you're doing something a little bit more slow, like an Excel or Word tutorial, you could even go down as slow as 15 frames per second and you'll still remain quite sharp and everything will look absolutely fine. So being able to choose that is really, really good. You can change the way the audio works. So you can capture the computer audio. I don't currently do that because I've got another way of doing that in another tool, but you can also keep the audio of the computer and yourself on separate tracks should you ever want to record that. So that just means you're not sort of having to fight different mixes, and you can adjust this all after the fact once you've done with your recording as well. So this is a really nice way of doing that. A couple other things to bear in mind. You can change the format, you can change the way it captures the retina recordings. You can even keep the quick access overlay up for a certain period of time. Mine is actually set to 2 minutes because it takes me roughly 2 minutes to figure out what I'm going to do with the screenshot before I want it to disappear. But nonetheless, everything else is pretty much straightforward. You've also got the cloud option, which I don't use in this case. And the advanced option lets you do things like customizing the file naming and everything else that you want to do. So again, a really good set of features. Now, the last thing I want to do is show you how I use this for recording videos on my channel, because that is absolutely the most common use for me when I use this application. It's pretty much all I use it for on my YouTube channel. And so the first thing I do is I actually have a shortcut on my Stream Deck, which is set up for recording video. And when I go ahead and hit the recording option, it will actually start recording and give me the overlay. So if I go ahead and select record screen, this is the overlay that it presents. Now, Cleanshot 10 remembers the previous recording settings you've had, and you can see that I've actually got my Shure MV7 mic plugged in here, and it's actually giving me feedback levels on the mic. And I know this is roughly correct because I set up the mic to work a little bit quieter than the mic actually likes to capture, but then I know how to edit that when I drop it into DaVinci Resolve. And if you go in here, you can see I have quite a few mics and audio inputs that are coming in. Some of these are obviously virtual, they're not real, but you can see you got a full set of options. The other thing you can see here is the camera. I've got quite a few camera sources. So for this particular case, I've got the Camlink 4K, which is connected to a Sony a6600 to do the general recordings. That's what I use as sort of a daily driver for recordings. When I'm doing recordings like this, which are a little bit higher quality, a little bit more controls required, I use my A7 IV, which is what I'm talking to you right now. But here's the great thing about Cleanshot 10. When I started my YouTube channel, I started with a Logitech C920 webcam. It was a completely different level to the two cameras I have. I think I could buy probably 100 of those cameras for the price of the two cameras I now use. And the thing is, Cleanshot 10 doesn't care. It doesn't care what you plug into it. It pretty much lets you plug in the phone as a microphone and your phone as a camera, as you can now do with the new versions of macOS and iOS. But as you start to level up your gear, you don't have to change your recording setup. Essentially, the quality goes up, but the workflow stays the same. And so I've actually stayed with Cleanshot 10 since I had it in, I think it was version 1.2 or something that actually added the recording capability. And that's when I started using it. It's now in version 4.5, and I've actually been able to stay with the same workflow all the way through, and it's just so powerful. A couple of other things to note here. You can obviously change the way the clicks work, so you can change highlights, and you can also change the keyboard settings. You can actually also control this. If I just hop out of this and go to settings, you'll actually be able to see that if I go to annotations here, you can see you can control the way that works. But also, if I go back to the recordings and go back to general, you can see here the keystroke options are available here, and I can change the size and scale of that. And as I change it, you can see that it shows them here on screen. So you get a little bit of a preview about how it works. You can change the position, you can change the style. Let's look at the light version to see how that works. I prefer the dark one because it's always visible regardless of what I'm using. Even if I'm on a dark page, it's just much easier to work. I can also choose which of the keys to show. I just like to show the command keys because fundamentally sometimes I'm typing things that are sensitive and I want to not capture those things. And so yeah, this is how it looks for me and this is how I use it. So I leave the settings as I like to use them on my channel. I don't want anything to change. These are presets that I've dialed in over time, so I don't want to sort of change anything here. But nonetheless, when you've set everything up how you want, you can just go ahead, let me go ahead and start a recording. Let's say record the screen, and here we go. This is the setup I use. And now if I wanted to, I can go ahead, start talking to camera, hit record, and it just starts recording. Now, I'm using a CalDigit external hub to plug the cameras, the microphones, and everything in. And so one quirk I've had with this technology is that because I'm using so many different things, when the audio and video land on the clip, when it's saved in the final clip, sometimes the audio is slightly out of sync. I fixed this in post in DaVinci Resolve. It tends to be like 0.08 of a second off, and I just move the timeline a little bit and tweak it and basically get it to match. And that's the kind of thing you'd expect with editing. When you're doing any sort of setup with lots of different moving parts, all running on different computerized clocks, this can happen. So it's just something to be aware of, but I've solved it quite easily and quickly. It takes me 2 seconds to resolve that. I have actually emailed them in the past about this particular issue, but it's nothing they can really control, because it's all to do with the way the signals are arriving on the computer that I'm recording, and they're all coming through different things. There's no way of me sort of getting less cables and less things involved. Eventually everything has to be plugged in somewhere, and so this is just how it works. But a way you could improve this is, for example, if you recorded the audio and the video through the same device. So in this case, if I was using my camera to record the video and the audio, it would work seamlessly, exactly how you'd expect. But in this case, because I'm doing a screen recording, I'm doing a camera recording, and I'm doing an audio recording, it's almost impossible for all three of those signals to arrive and be recorded at the same time. And so this is what happens. And so the recording here is running, it's absolutely fine. And when I'm done, I'll go ahead and hit stop, and we get the editing tools. You can do what you expect with this. You can drag and drop this end. You can kind of bring this all back, tweak it how you want. But again, I just love this. You can control the different sizes of the different outputs. And I just think it's an incredible tool. Now, I probably come across like an absolute fanboy for this tool. And that's because I am. I've been using it for so long. And I'm actually making this video because I keep getting asked, what do I use for recording? And I just want to be able to send people to a video that I've made, telling them how I use it, all the different settings. And I highly encourage you to download this and try it out for yourself. In terms of actually getting it, there's a couple of options. You can go to the Cleanshot 10 website and just buy it straight up. I actually don't use it that way. I use another service called Setup. Now, Setup is an app subscription. You're probably thinking, oh no, here comes another subscription. Well, in this particular case, it actually gives you access to dozens of applications. And just to show you sort of for transparency what I use it for, let's actually open my own Setup application. You can see I have an active subscription, and on this Mac, these are all the things that I use in Setup and how I use them. And so they're kind of in order of use. I use Bartender, which is what's managing my sort of toolbar here at the top. I'm one of these people that has so many applications open all the time, I just can't close them down. So Bartender really helps me out. Shorten URLs. Anyway, I don't want this to become about these other tools. In this bundle, in this subscription, which is one monthly subscription, you get a bunch of apps that are available. You download them, install them, use them how you like. The developer gets paid based on the usage that you have in that month. And so Cleanshot 10 is actually available through this setup. And this is how I use it. And you can see in here it has a great rating. Pretty much everyone loves it. I don't know who doesn't. And so I think this is the best way of having it. You know the developers are getting supported, and you also know that it's coming from a marketplace that's backing it as well. In the event that it was ever to come off this marketplace, I will probably definitely fork out, because it's just generated so much value for me and my YouTube channel over the years. And so this is what I'll definitely be doing. So if you want to use Setup, you can absolutely do that. I have a referral link that gives you a month free, and it gives me a month free. So if you use that, that's how you're supporting me. But if you don't, go ahead to the Setup website. In fact, don't go to the Setup website, go ahead to the developers website, which I've now closed, and enjoy the subscription on their website. Let's actually pull this preview up here. You can just go to the preview instead, and we can actually use this here as a way of telling you to go to the Cleanshot 10 website, check it out, and yeah, use the tool. I think I've really enjoyed it. If you've got any questions that you want to ask, go ahead and drop them in the comments below. I'll try and answer them the best I can. This was intended to just be a quick walk around, not a quick tour or tutorial. If you would like a tutorial, let me know in the comments below, and we'll get that done very soon. But otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.